So let's jump right into domain one. Again, A plus 220-1001, and domain 1 is going to talk about mobile devices. So in this one, we're going to look at laptops, notebooks, tablets, Surface, iPads, which one did I miss here? Cell phones, maybe. I don't know if I said that or not, but all those mobile devices, right? Not the desktop computers, not server systems you may have in a comm closet somewhere. Things we can take in this actually mobile, right? So what are we going to look at? Again, the laptop hardware and components. We're going to dive in there first. Then we're going to talk about the display of the laptop, right? The part that we actually see around the display. Talking about how we can replace like the microphone or the webcam. We're going to look at different laptop features. We'll go over those. Different types of other mobile devices. We're going to contrast and compare the characteristics of, right? Then we're going to take a look at the accessories and ports of other mobile devices that we may have, device network connectivity, and application support. And then we'll wrap it up there with mobile device synchronization like iTunes or whatever other synchronization utility you may use. That's the kind of thing that we're going to talk about in there. So the first one up is domain 1.1. So, right, that's the part we're going to talk about, those hardware components, right? So, like I said, this part of the course is somewhat challenging for online, this video type learning because of the install portion, right? It's very, very difficult to I can't have the camera right here in front of me and actually working at the same. It doesn't work out super well that way. So I've got generalized steps on things like this. I do have lots of pictures. We're gonna have video. And I'm gonna describe each component the best I can, right? I'll hold up my hands. I'm sure I talk with my hands all the time. They tell me I got that from my grandmother, but anyway, we'll describe that best you can. I do have an older laptop that I'm going to demo with, right? So when we go through this and we talk about replacing the keyboard, right? When we get into I guess you consider it a demo, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the laptop apart right in front of you, right? We're going to try to get a camera angle best we can where you can see me getting into the keyboard, getting in, changing out the RAM, removing the hard drive, which on this laptop it's real easy to do. We'll take out the CD, DVD drive, and things like that, right? I'm going to take this laptop all apart because it is an older laptop. Not that I'm rich by any means, but I've got a couple older laptops, and I grabbed one on the way out the door, and I decided that we're going to take this apart for the greater good, right? Which is you. So I hope you appreciate my sacrifice to the A+. I won't say gods, but anyway. Now, in this, all right, I also need you to keep in mind that when we get in here and I say, okay, remove this screw, or if you look here, you'll see blah, 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 blah. And if you're looking on your laptop at the exact same time, that screw may not be there. That hinge may not be there exactly in the right place. All right. Again, don't send me a bunch of emails. Don't send out a bunch of emails. Well, you got this wrong. You got that wrong. I may have it wrong for your particular vendor, but I'm working on a Dell laptop, not a MacBook Pro, right? They're going to be different. So keep that kind of thing in mind. Like I said, the steps are going to be generalized steps. Turn it off, unplug stuff, remove this, and so on and so forth, okay? So it needs to be understood between you and I, right? That you may have to refer to a manual vendor site. You may have to go out and I guess I could say this since we're doing a video series. You may have to go check YouTube, right? Vendors put YouTube videos out there as well. They may not put them on their websites anymore, right? And I'm not talking about the guy that, took a college class and he wants to make a YouTube video because he knows everything about IT now. Not those videos. I'm talking about the videos that come from Apple or Dell or IBM or MSI or whomever your vendor is for that particular piece of hardware. That's the kind of thing you need to keep in mind. All right. Now, this is 14% of the exam objectives. I put lowest for all domains. Not exactly the low. There is a 12% out there. So I do get that one incorrect. I apologize for it. It's one of the lower ones, though, right? It is the lower of the two, one of the lowest two out there of the 5. So what we're going to take a look at, hard drives, memory, batteries, and CPUs, all kinds of good hardware is inside of 1.1. So the first one up is the keyboard, right? And you may think, well, David, I know what the keyboard is. I really don't need you to tell me that part. And that may be true for most folks, right? But again, keep in mind, A+ is for entry-level IT professionals, right? So I can't teach to the person that may know how to do scripting and programming and stuff, and you're taking A+ because your employer told you need to get this certification. I'm teaching to those folks that want to get started in IT, right? Those folks that are coming out of high school or getting into college or getting back into the workforce. They're like, you know what? I don't want to do whatever I've been doing for the last 5-7 years. I want to get into IT. It's a hot field right now, and maybe I can move over to cybersecurity or go to networking or go to incident handling or forensics, right? All hot topics. A+ is a good starting point here. So again, keyboards, you know, especially for the notebooks and laptops, the keyboards aren't full size, right? Or regular keyboards. When I say regular, I'm gonna hold this one up. Hopefully I don't hit any keys so we move. But this is a regular size keyboard, right? Now you can't, most laptops are not that wide, right? They are smaller because they're mobile devices. So you can't stick this whole keyboard on a regular size laptop. And when I say regular, you know, I'm talking 15-inch screens, right? Now you can get 17-inch screens, and because I have a 17-inch screen on my laptop, but it's a gaming laptop, and it pretty much has a full-size keyboard on it. It's a little closer than what I have here in front of me, right? But I still have the number pad. I still have everything right there. A lot of notebooks, a lot of laptops don't have that kind of thing, right? Because the laptop shell, it has less space to hold the keys. There's just not as much real estate there to have a full-sized keyboard right in front of you. So they cut that off, right? They usually remove the number pad, right? I'm not going to hold this up again because I'll press my luck and I'll end up hitting a button, make the slide go forward. But the number pad's over here on the side, right? That's about this much of the keyboard. That's a lot of real estate when it comes to laptops and mobile devices, right? So they usually take that off. And those are, you know, some type of combination of function keys and letter keys to make that number happen. That's the way my first laptop was. The laptop that I'm going to demo with is the exact same way because it's a 15-inch laptop as well. Now, most larger screen laptops, like I said, we can have a full-size keyboard. And it's not, again, not exactly like this. All the keys are right side by side, but I still have a number pad on my laptop. But it's a ridiculously large laptop as well, right? It's heavy to carry. I carry it around just because of what I do, but it's not a very light laptop. I'll put it that way. It's kind of a challenge to carry around, and if you carry anything else with it, like I carry my Surface Pro with me as well, right? And it's a lot smaller screen, but that's just extra weight you're carrying around. Eventually it gets a little heavy, but so like I said, it is a huge laptop, right? But, you know, to each his own. If you have to have the full-size keyboard and you want the 17-inch screen or larger screen, then hey, that's totally up to you. You can do what you need to do there. Now, like I said earlier, they did combine the keys for functionality, right? They took off the number pad, but they still wanted you to be able to use the number pad, not just the numbers across the top row there. So what you may have to do is use normal function keys, F1, F2, F3 up at the top for other things, right? Like volume control, screen control, turn the Wi-Fi on and off like airplane mode, right? So you'd have to hit that function key, that FN key, that blue one down on the bottom left-hand corner of your keyboard, and then that corresponds to the blue text, which this keyboard doesn't have any, the blue text on some of the other keys, and they call those sub keys, right? My laptop has those. My laptop's sitting over here to my right. That's why I looked over that way. I apologize. But I was trying to see if my laptop had that. It does up on the function keys. They're not blue. They're all white. My Surface Pro has that, right? Because they save a lot of space on that keyboard, right? That keyboard is really small. There's no number pad. There's no home or end or anything to that keyboard. And it's a removable keyboard as well. But a lot of those sub-function keys are up at the top, right? So anything I want, you know, if I want to dim the screen or turn the sound up and down or pause a video or hook up an external display or put it in airplane mode, right? I have to hit that function key, the FN key down on the bottom left-hand corner, and then the corresponding keys up towards the top. So if a function key, number key, you know, things happen, right? Maybe something's just not performing properly. You might need to replace the keyboard, right? Now, it's not one of the most difficult things, but I will tell you, and I've been doing this for a little bit, but the first time you take apart a laptop, any computer really, you may be a little nervous about it, and that's perfectly okay, right? You should be, right? Every time I think about being nervous, when I was 18-year-old and I worked at Burger King, I had a manager at one time, and she was teaching me how to give interviews, right, to potential employees. And so I would sit there during interviews while she was giving those. And I remember one young lady, she was super nervous, right? And I said something to my manager after she left. I was like, I think she'd be a good fit, but she seemed really, really nervous. Is it something she could do? And she said if she wasn't nervous, or she was nervous because she cared, right? So I always think about that. I think, well, when I'm taking something apart, if I'm nervous about it, I guess I care that I'm going to break something, right? So it's not always a bad thing. Now, if your hands are shaking like this because you're so nervous or scared, you might want to step away and come back because you might mess something up. But if your heart's beating a little heavier, you're breathing a little heavy, it's normal, right? That's totally normal. And any IT person that tells you that, they didn't do that when they first got started and they just jumped in and did that, they're not being totally truthful with you, right? Now, I'm not saying they did that when they were 30 or 20 or 12, right? Because it seems like we're getting started earlier in our IT careers. But anyway, again, not one of the most difficult tasks. It kind of depends on the vendor. All right, now the keyboard that I'm going to take apart is not difficult at all. I pop off a couple things, I'll take off a couple screws, and you'll actually see the keyboard tilt forward, right? So here are those generalized steps, and any of these steps I put in here from now forward are generalized. I think I've said that about 14 times now. All right, so I'm just trying to make sure I cover myself to let you know these are generalized steps. First thing, you probably, on all of them, turn off the system. Right? Don't work on your laptop. Don't work on your desktop. Don't work on anything with it powered on. You're just setting yourself up for failure. I'm not saying you're going to get shocked or hurt. You're going to have data corruption. Is a bad idea. Turn it off. Power it completely down. Disconnect the system. Disconnect it from the wall. Disconnect any peripheral devices, printers, microphones, headsets, external hard drives, gaming pads, whatever. Right, disconnect everything from that and remove any installed batteries. Now, we're going to talk about the CMOS battery, right? I'm not talking about that battery. I'm talking about the battery for the device, right? Now, some devices, that's a challenge, right? Like my laptop, battery can't come out. It's sealed inside of there. So if I want to take the battery out, I have to take the laptop apart. The Dell that I'm going to have for demonstrations, all right, the battery slides out. IBM batteries, they slide out the back, right? So that's what I'm saying. It depends on your vendor on how you can get the batteries out, because everybody does their own thing. Once we remove the battery, we're going to go ahead and remove the hard drive. You may not have to do that, depending on where the hard drive is. Still not a bad idea. And remove the screws from the bottom of the laptop. You may not have to do that like the laptop I'm going to work on. I don't have to remove the screws from the bottom, I don't believe. Now that I say that out loud, I'm pretty sure it just pops off the top and there's screws on there and I can lift it off of the top. Turn the laptop back over, open up the clamshell. The clamshell, by the way, is the plastic around everything, right? So we're going to open that up so we can actually see the keyboard down in there. And then we're going to remove that top cover. So step 6 is what you're going to see from me. I'll have a small flat edge screwdriver, so we're going to need a flathead screwdriver, not a Phillips, not the X, not the Phillips one. There's going to be a top right. All right, there is a little notch, and I'm going to try to hold up the laptop and I'll show you, but that just pops off, and it's just a little plastic strip, and it's hiding the screws under there. So I'm going to use the same screwdriver. I'm going to pry up the keyboard after I remove those screws. All right, lift the keyboard up, you'll see it. There'll be a ribbon, right? And when we say ribbon, it's about as thin if you think of like a Christmas ribbon, right? The ribbon on your presents that you may have gotten for Christmas, right? The ribbon's real thin, but it's wide, right? Same thing, that's why we call it a ribbon. It's the electrical connection that it has from the keyboard to the actual system unit, right? We call it a ribbon because it looks like a ribbon, except it's got wires and stuff in it. So anyway, tilt that forward, you'll see the ribbon in there. You'll want to remove that off of the motherboard connector, and then you can take that keyboard up, and if it's old or needs to be cleaned, if it's old, you probably want to toss it. If there's keys broken for whatever reason, somebody fell on it, you got you got mad and you hit it. I've seen that kind of thing happen, right? If you can't repair it, you're going to have to replace it, right? So, in my opinion, I would replace it with the exact same part number. I know there are generic keyboards, generic parts out there, generic pieces you can get offline that are probably a little bit cheaper. I kind of go with the thought process of you get what you pay for when it comes to that kind of thing. So to each his own. I'm not going to tell you what you have to get. I try to get the same pieces, same model number from reputable vendors. Put that back in. That way I know it should work, right? As long as I did it correctly. So that was the keyboard. Now the hard drives, right? We got hard drives in mobile devices. We got hard drives in desktop servers. We got hard drives all over the place. But this is where the non-volatile data is stored for later use, right? Being non-volatile, it means I don't have to have power to that system all the time. You may shut down your laptop, your desktop, your notebook, your whatever. You turn it back on, that PowerPoint slide that you had or Word document or whatever you were working on, your programming, your script you're writing for school is still there, right? Because you saved it on the hard drive, non-volatile. Now, just like with keyboards, laptops don't have full-size hard drives in them, right? I've got 3 different pictures up here. By the way, all these pictures, Google Images, I don't grab them from one different place. I look for what I think is what I need to describe what it is I'm trying to tell you, right? So we got full-size hard drives on here. We've got the 2.5, the 1.8, and I put an SSD out there as well. Well, actually, the 2.5 and it looks like the 1.8 are SSDs as well, but that Samsung hard drive, again, we're not pushing any vendors, Samsung, IBM, Dell, whomever. I don't care. It's to each his own. I'm going to give you some ideas of where to look, and then you can form your own opinions on what's what. I just grabbed a popular picture, something that I thought looked good with resolution, all right? So that's why that's there. But the one on the far right of the screen, that is a full-size hard drive. And normally it doesn't look like that. It'd have a cover on top of it. Right, you don't get to see down inside of it, but this one, the cover's been removed. So we can see the platters, and there's lots of things going on inside. We'll get to that later, right? But that's a full-size hard drive on the far right. And then the ones to the left, as you move over, that Samsung is a SSD. That's a 2.5, and then you can see how comparable they are. And this is in inches, by the way, right? So the ones on the left-hand side, the 1.8 and 2.5, that's what you find inside of our laptops. And then the notebooks is probably the 1.8 drives, like your Chromebook, for example, may have a small hard drive in it. Actually, that was a terrible example because they don't really put hard drives in there. Trying to think of another low-end notebook off the top of my head. I don't own one of those. That's more of a challenge. But the smaller devices, the smaller the hard drives, right? So the 1.8, that's how small it is. So here's a comparison with SSDs, solid-state drives, which are fantastic, right? When I got my first solid-state drive, I was trying to figure out what I did before I had solid-state drives. You're like, where did this come from? Your computer boots up in like 3 seconds. Your applications start faster. You're just like, wow, how did I live without this for so long? And it's probably because I checked my bank account and I couldn't afford them. But nowadays, SSDs and HDDs, the magnetic drives, the hard disk drives, they're so inexpensive in the realm of things and the scope of the components we can put in here. They're inexpensive. Storage is very inexpensive nowadays. And SSDs, they're coming down and down and down. So why would we need those other than I said it boots faster? Well, I've got some comparison. I made a table here. The SSDs are on the left. The HDDs, the hard disk drives, are on the right. And then we have something called a hybrid drive, right? Now, a hybrid takes the best of SSDs and the best of HDDs, right? Because hard disk drives, they have usually more storage space and so on and so forth. SSDs are faster and so on. So what I've done is I made some comparisons here. The arrows in the middle for hybrid, right? If it's pointing to the right, then that means that it kind of got that hybrid does that part, right? If it's leaning to the left, then the hybrid does that part, which would be the SSDs. If it goes both ways, then it does a little bit of both, right? It just kind of depends on the vendor and the piece of equipment that you buy. So SSDs, lower temps, right? Because there's very small power consumption. There's no moving parts, right? It is a NAND chip, right? It is just a chip It's kind of like a memory chip, right, inside of that box, and that's where the data is stored, right? There's no spinning hard drive, right? If you remember the picture from the previous slide, right, the full-size hard drive, right, it looked like a big circle in there. Well, that turns, right, and that spins very, very, very fast. 5,400 RPM, 7,200, 10,000, 15,000. Depends on what it's in, but the faster it spins, more power consumption, more heat's going to be generated, more noise is going to be generated as well. SSDs are super quiet, right? Now, the access time is going to be a lot faster as well, right? Because there's no moving parts. That's why I say it can boot up, start applications extremely fast. With an HDD, it's usually about 3 milliseconds to 5.5. It depends on the speed. And when I say speed, how fast the hard drives are spinning, right? At 5,400 RPMs, you're going to be on the higher end, right? Because it's just not spinning as fast. Now, don't get me wrong, 5,400 revolutions per minute is pretty fast, right? But it's not as fast as, say, 10,000 or 15,000 that you may see on a high-end server system or a high-end workstation, right? If I can spin faster, I can find the data faster, and that's where you get the lower ends on that. Your failure rates, we got about 0.5% failure rates for SSDs, 2 to 5% failure rates for HDDs. I don't remember exactly where I got that information from because that's not something I just made up. But I would be willing to bet that's pretty close. It may be a little on the high end for HDDs. You don't see that as often as you used to, right? Because we make products better. 10, 15, 20 years ago, HDDs, you had to keep extra hard drives in your closet because you never knew when something just might go out, right? And I'm not saying it doesn't happen, because it does, but not as often as it used to. It kind of depends on other factors. How many times does it start up and shut down? How long is it continuously spinning, right? Do you shut your computer down off at night and so on and so forth?